Imagine standing at an airport with two boarding passes in your hand. One takes you toward the west, the other takes you abroad. East, Middle East, South Asia, or anywhere culture still whispers into people's choices. You haven't moved yet, but your love life already feels different. Because dating is not just about attraction. Dating is a reflection of values, fear, freedom, trauma, and what a society rewards or punishes. And the moment you change geography, you don't just change accents or food, you change the psychology of love itself. In the West, dating begins with options, endless options. Swipe culture doesn't just give choice, it conditions the mind to believe that someone better is always one swipe away. Attraction. There is fast, visual, immediate. People meet quickly, connect quickly, and detach even faster. Emotional depth is not the entry point. Excitement is. Chemistry is treated like destiny, and effort is often mistaken for desperation. If you like someone too much too soon, you risk being labeled intense. If you ask for clarity, you risk being seen as insecure. Independence is celebrated so loudly that interdependence starts sounding like a weakness. People in the West date to explore themselves first, not the relationship. The question is rarely, can we build something together? It is usually, how does this make me feel right now? Love becomes an experience, not a responsibility. Commitment is delayed, sometimes indefinitely, because settling down feels like losing freedom, and freedom in that system is the highest currency. Emotional availability is admired in theory, but avoided in practice. Everyone wants honesty, but very few want accountability. Now contrast that with dating abroad, where relationships don't exist in isolation. You are not just dating a person, you are stepping into a family system, a cultural expectation, a long-term narrative. Attraction still matters, but it is not the only gatekeeper. Character, reputation, background, values, all of these enter the room early. Dating is slower, heavier, more intentional. People ask different questions. Not, are we vibing, but will this work in real life? Not, do you excite me, but can I trust you? In many non-Western cultures, love is not something you stumble into accidentally. It is something you grow into deliberately. There is less emphasis on instant chemistry and more emphasis on emotional stability. People may not articulate their feelings as openly, but their actions are louder. Consistency is romantic. Reliability is attractive. Showing up matters more than saying the right words. And while this system can feel restrictive to some, it offers something the West often struggles to provide: direction. In the West, dating teaches people how to leave. Abroad, dating teaches people how to stay. That difference alone changes everything. When leaving is easy, effort becomes optional. When staying is expected, effort becomes necessary. This doesn't mean one system is perfect and the other is pure. Both have flaws. Western dating allows personal choice, but often lacks emotional discipline. Dating abroad offers structure but can suppress individual needs. The problem is not culture. The problem is unconscious imitation. Western dating normalizes emotional detachment as maturity. People learn to protect themselves by not caring too much. Vulnerability is shared carefully, selectively, often after physical intimacy, not before. Sex becomes a way to test compatibility rather than a result of emotional safety. And once physical access is easy, emotional investment feels unnecessary. People confuse access with intimacy, attention with affection, and convenience with connection. Abroad, emotional restraint is often misunderstood as emotional unavailability, but restraint does not always mean absence of feeling. Sometimes it means depth without performance. Love is shown through responsibility, not constant validation. There is patience, but also pressure. You are expected to know what you want, to honor timelines, to consider the future early. Romance is quieter, but heavier. Less fireworks, more foundation. One of the biggest psychological differences is how rejection is handled. In the West, rejection is personalized. People internalize it as "I wasn't enough." This fuels self-doubt and validation-seeking behavior. Abroad, rejection is contextual. It is about mismatch, family, timing, or practicality. Less ego, more realism. This changes how people recover. Western daters often carry emotional scars from undefined relationships. Abroad, people carry responsibility scars from expectations they couldn't meet. Another difference is how men and women are shaped by the system. Western dating encourages men to delay commitment and women to delay expectations. Everyone waits, no one leads. Abroad, men are often expected to prove stability early, and women are expected to assess seriousness quickly. This creates clarity, but also pressure. One system suffers from confusion, the other from constraint. Love languages shift too. In the West, words dominate. Texts, affirmations, emotional expression. Abroad, actions dominate. Provision, protection, consistency. When people cross cultures, this mismatch creates misunderstanding. One feels unloved because they don't hear it. The other feels unappreciated because they don't see it acknowledged. What most people don't realize is that dating struggles are rarely personal failures. They are cultural conditioning conflicts. Someone raised on Western dating norms may feel suffocated abroad. Someone raised abroad may feel disposable in the West. Neither is broken. They are just speaking different emotional languages. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The West didn't make dating shallow, and the East didn't make it pure. Trauma, fear, ego, and insecurity exist everywhere. The difference is what society rewards. In the West, emotional independence is rewarded, even when it turns into emotional isolation. Abroad, conformity is rewarded, even when it silences authenticity. Love suffers in both when awareness is missing. The real question is not where dating is better. The real question is what kind of love you are trying to build. If you want freedom without responsibility, the West will feel comfortable. If you want stability with expectations, dating abroad will feel familiar. But if you want depth, clarity, and growth, you will struggle in both unless you consciously choose your values over the system. And this is where most people get confused, because they assume geography will fix what self-awareness never addressed. They move countries, change dating pools, switch apps, adopt new rules, but they carry the same emotional habits with them. A person who avoids intimacy in the West will still avoid it abroad, just with different excuses. A person who fears abandonment abroad will still fear it in the West, just with more silence around it. Culture amplifies behavior. It doesn't cure it. In Western dating, people are taught to brand themselves. You present your best version early, your wounds later, if at all. Dating becomes a performance of desirability. You learn how to be interesting, not how to be emotionally safe. You learn how to flirt, not how to repair conflict. And when conflict arrives, because it always does, people don't have the skills to sit inside discomfort. They exit quietly, politely. Ghosting becomes normal, not because people are cruel, but because they were never taught how to stay when things stop feeling easy. Abroad, dating often skips the performance stage and jumps straight into evaluation. People assess seriousness early, sometimes too early. There is less room to explore identity inside the relationship. You are expected to know who you are and what you want before you begin. This creates security for some and anxiety for others, especially for those who never had the freedom to experiment emotionally. Love becomes a duty before it becomes a desire, and many people comply without ever asking themselves if they truly feel chosen or simply obligated. Another quiet difference is how loneliness is treated. In the West, loneliness is private and often hidden behind productivity, social life, and casual intimacy. People are surrounded, yet alone. Abroad, loneliness is communal but silent. Family is present. Community exists, but emotional needs are rarely named. One system numbs loneliness with distraction, the other with denial. Neither teaches people how to sit with themselves honestly. Power dynamics also shift. In the West, power comes from emotional detachment. The one who cares less appears stronger. This creates games, delayed replies, mixed signals, strategic vulnerability. Dating turns into psychological chess rather than emotional connection. Abroad, power often comes from social leverage, family approval, financial stability, reputation. Emotional power is externalized, not negotiated privately between two people. This can protect relationships, but it can also trap individuals inside them. When people from these systems date each other, the clash is intense. One wants clarity, the other wants space. One interprets independence as distance, the other interprets closeness as control. Arguments are not about behavior, they are about meaning. A delayed reply feels disrespectful to one and normal to the other. Silence feels peaceful to one and punishing to the other. Love is not failing. Translation is. Western dating often postpones serious conversations until feelings are strong enough. Abroad, serious conversations often happen before feelings are fully formed. One risks emotional chaos, the other risks emotional emptiness. And many people don't realize which pain they are choosing until they are already deep inside it. What's rarely discussed is how healing looks different too. In the West, healing is individualistic. Therapy, self-work, boundaries. Abroad, healing is relational. Marriage, family support, routine. One asks you to understand yourself, the other asks you to endure with others. Growth happens in different directions. One builds awareness, the other builds resilience. But awareness without resilience collapses under pressure, and resilience without awareness hardens into quiet suffering. People often romanticize dating abroad as more serious or traditional without realizing that seriousness without emotional literacy can become repression. And people often romanticize Western dating as more free and authentic without realizing that freedom without accountability turns into emotional chaos. Love doesn't thrive on extremes. It needs balance. Choice with commitment, freedom with responsibility, passion with patience. The deepest difference is not how people meet, date, or commit. It's how they interpret love itself. In the West, love is something that should make you happy. Abroad, love is something you should sacrifice for. One prioritizes fulfillment, the other prioritizes endurance. And both forget that healthy love requires joy and effort, not one at the expense of the other. So people keep asking, where is dating better? When the real question is, what have I been taught to tolerate, and what have I never been taught to ask for? Because until that question is answered, every culture will feel wrong, every relationship will feel incomplete, and every ending will feel confusing. Not because love is broken, but because it was never consciously chosen. And this is why so many people move across borders expecting romance to change automatically. They think if they leave the toxic culture behind, love will suddenly feel effortless. But the truth is, emotional habits travel with you. A person who fears vulnerability will still fear it, whether they are sipping coffee in a Parisian cafe or walking through the crowded streets of Karachi. The only thing that changes is the social script, the rules, the rituals, the ways people signal interest or rejection. The internal patterns remain. In Western dating, people are trained to chase excitement and novelty. Dates are short, flirty, full of adrenaline. Chemistry is celebrated, but consistency is undervalued. Someone who disappears for a week might not be rejected outright. Absence is normalized, even romanticized. Emotional risk is carefully calculated. And because so much is casual, disappointment becomes expected, detachment becomes skill, and commitment feels like a trap. People fall in love with the idea of love rather than the person, and many mistakes are repeated until self-awareness finally interrupts the cycle. Abroad, the dance is slower but heavier. Every interaction carries weight. Words are measured, intentions are scrutinized, and actions are observed over time. People cannot hide behind endless options. They must confront compatibility honestly. This can be suffocating for someone used to choice as leverage, but it can also be liberating because it forces clarity. Ambiguity is a luxury, not a norm. People learn to interpret subtle cues, to weigh actions over words, to trust long-term consistency. Emotional literacy is developed in ways the West often skips entirely. Sexual dynamics also differ dramatically. In Western dating, sexual expression is often separated from commitment, and physical intimacy is sometimes used as currency, as validation, or as a tool for experimentation. Emotional safety is secondary, and boundaries are often negotiated retroactively. Abroad, sex is usually embedded within expectations, even if unspoken, and intimacy is tied to trust, responsibility, and social accountability. Physical connection cannot exist in isolation from consequence. Both systems carry risks. One risks detachment, the other risks pressure. Both can fail if emotional intelligence is absent. Communication patterns show stark contrasts as well. Western dating encourages verbal expression, feelings, intentions, anxieties, but often without follow-through. People talk about emotions, but rarely model emotional reliability. Abroad, expression may be restrained, but actions communicate intent. A promise is measured by consistency, not rhetoric. Silence is meaningful, not empty. Words are fewer, but weightier. People learn patience, observation, and discernment. But someone used to verbal affirmation may misread quiet as rejection, creating tension. Friendship boundaries are another dividing line. In Western cultures, platonic friendships, including mixed-gender ones, are celebrated and often deeply integrated into daily life. Jealousy may be less socially tolerated. Abroad, friendships are frequently bounded by cultural expectations, proximity, decorum, family observation. Mixed-gender friendships may carry implicit judgments, and the overlap between romantic and social life is complex. Misreading these boundaries can cause conflict, but they also teach careful navigation, discernment, and the consequences of overstepping unspoken rules. Mental frameworks for commitment differ. In the West, commitment is often treated as an option, a contract signed when both parties feel ready. People explore, date multiple people, and delay serious decisions, believing that freedom and autonomy are ultimate indicators of emotional maturity. Abroad, commitment is sometimes non-negotiable once dating begins. There is less room to hedge, more pressure to decide, and more attention on whether both people's lives are compatible for the long term. It can feel restrictive, but it also forces honesty, intentionality, and evaluation before emotions are fully invested. Conflict resolution mirrors this divergence. Western daters often avoid difficult conversations, opting for temporary solutions, ghosting, or minimizing problems until they fester. Emotional avoidance is normalized as self-care. Abroad, conflict is unavoidable because of intertwined families, communities, and social expectations. People are forced to face disagreement, navigate compromise, and reconcile differences. The stakes are higher, and emotional intelligence is tested in real time. This creates resilience, but also friction. The way self-worth is shaped cannot be ignored. Western dating teaches external validation, likes, swipes, attention, as proof of desirability. People often define their value through feedback loops rather than intrinsic understanding. Abroad, value is more relational and contextual. Your worth is measured against your ability to sustain responsibility, reliability, and social harmony. One encourages independence, the other interdependence. Both shape identity, but the impact on emotional patterns is profound. The ultimate tension is between freedom and accountability. The West prioritizes emotional freedom, but often sacrifices depth. Abroad prioritizes accountability, but sometimes at the cost of personal autonomy. Neither is inherently superior. Both teach lessons, both expose vulnerabilities, and both can fracture or elevate love depending on awareness, maturity, and intention. And this tension between freedom and accountability trickles into how expectations are managed. In Western dating, expectations are often implied, hidden behind casual language, and left to be inferred. "Let's see where this goes" is a phrase loaded with ambiguity. People are left guessing, wondering if they are investing too much or too little. Emotional investment becomes a strategic choice rather than a natural response. Abroad, expectations are explicit, sometimes unspoken, but enforced by social structures. People know early what is expected of them, whether it's consistency, family involvement, or long-term planning. This clarity can feel constraining, but it also reduces wasted emotional energy. The role of social media cannot be ignored. In the West, dating culture is heavily influenced by visibility, attention metrics, and performative intimacy. Photos, stories, likes, comments, all shape perception and desirability. Emotional signaling becomes public theater. Abroad, social media exists, but often as a supplement rather than the driver of romantic behavior. Reputation offline, within community and family, carries more weight than an Instagram highlight. This changes how people approach courtship, communication, and emotional expression. Friendship and romantic overlap is another subtle but profound difference. In Western dating, casual intimacy can coexist with broad friendship networks without much scrutiny. Boundaries are flexible and social approval is less pressing. Abroad, networks are tight, family is aware, and every romantic choice resonates socially. Decisions are rarely isolated, they ripple. This teaches accountability and foresight, but can also suppress spontaneity. The way people navigate these boundaries shapes emotional resilience and adaptability in relationships. Emotional processing is a stark contrast as well. Western daters often focus on immediate emotional gratification, how a date or interaction made them feel in the moment. Reflection is optional. Abroad, emotional processing is slower and often communal. Decisions are weighed, discussed with trusted confidence, and filtered through cultural norms. Patience becomes a skill. Impulse is moderated by consequence. Emotional intelligence develops differently. One cultivates personal awareness, the other cultivates social awareness. Physical intimacy reflects these cultural codes too. In the West, sexual connection is often exploratory and seen as a form of emotional testing. Intimacy can exist without accountability. Abroad, sexual connection is rarely detached from social and emotional responsibility. The stakes are higher, trust is non-negotiable, and timing matters. This impacts attachment patterns, emotional safety, and relationship longevity. A misalignment between these systems can cause confusion for those moving between cultures. One of the most underestimated differences is how attachment styles are expressed. Western dating encourages independent attachment, secure or avoidant, but often distant. People learn to cope with intermittent reinforcement and emotional unpredictability. Abroad, attachment is relationally enforced. Security is measured by reliability, consistency, and adherence to shared norms. People learn interdependent attachment, which can feel restrictive to someone accustomed to freedom, but it also fosters stability. Decision-making in relationships diverges sharply. In Western dating, major decisions, moving in, exclusivity, future planning, are often postponed until emotional certainty is achieved, sometimes indefinitely. Abroad, major decisions are expected early, assessed pragmatically, and often acted upon quickly. Timing matters, and hesitation can carry social or relational consequences. People adapt differently depending on their emotional conditioning, and mistakes are often less about heart and more about learned cultural scripts. Even conflict avoidance is instructive. In the West, avoidance is often interpreted as self-care or independence. People leave rather than negotiate discomfort. Abroad, avoidance is not socially feasible. Problems must be addressed to maintain harmony. This develops negotiation skills, patience, and resilience, but also introduces pressure and emotional stress. People learn to manage tension not just for themselves, but for a broader social ecosystem. Finally, the underlying psychology of attraction shifts. In Western dating, attraction is often fueled by novelty, confidence, and excitement. Effort is optional because availability is abundant. Abroad, attraction is layered with responsibility, trustworthiness, and predictability. Effort is mandatory because options are socially limited, but emotional risk is shared. People may feel that one system is freer and the other heavier, but both are teaching how humans navigate intimacy, trust, and connection under different cultural conditions. The subtleties continue to unfold as we examine how love is maintained, how expectations are reinforced, and how people negotiate identity versus partnership in these contrasting worlds. Freedom, structure, independence, accountability, novelty, and responsibility. They all interact differently, yet the human heart remains constant in seeking understanding, security, and validation. And when we step back and look at the bigger picture, one truth becomes undeniable. Dating is never truly about geography. It is about awareness, intention, and emotional maturity. The West or abroad can shape behaviors, but they cannot transform the heart, heal insecurities, or teach vulnerability. The freedom of the West without responsibility can leave the soul empty, and the structure abroad without self-awareness can leave the heart confined. Real love, lasting love, thrives not in a culture, not in a country, but in the people who are willing to understand themselves, communicate honestly, and commit consciously. So the ultimate lesson is this: don't blame culture for your heartbreak, and don't rely on geography to fix your patterns. Examine your emotional habits, define your values, and choose your relationships with clarity, courage, and accountability. Because the kind of love that transforms you, that nurtures growth, that survives challenges, is not found in a place. It is created by people who refuse to settle for convenience, who refuse to confuse attraction with intimacy, and who are brave enough to love with both heart and mind fully aligned. This is the power you must carry forward. Awareness over location, depth over novelty, responsibility over impulse, and courage over comfort. When you do, dating, whether in the West or abroad, becomes not a gamble, but a journey of growth, discovery, and true connection.